Hello once again. This is your professor, Danny Araneta Cabulay, for the course Accountancy Research. We're now in week number 8 and this is video lecture number 38. So for this particular episode, we will be talking about how to formulate recommendations for your research paper. So, usually, ang recommendations, yan na yung pinakahuling part ng research, kung academic research. At kung ikaw naman ay gumagawa ng isang business research or accountancy research, take note, hindi lahat ng business or accountancy research reports ay mayroong recommendations. Sometimes meron, sometimes wala. I'll give an example. An industry report does not require recommendations. But a feasibility study, a business plan, an action research, they require a set of recommendations. Okay? Recommendations are proposed solutions or courses of action suggested by the audit practitioner or business consultant supported by data after vetting the results of the study and always based on conclusions. So, hindi pwedeng magpapasok ka ng new information or new data sa recommendations. It's always based on your conclusions. And remember, your conclusions were based on the findings. Okay? So you should be addressing the SOP, the problem you want to solve, the research problem. Okay? Thus, reports anchored on specific problems that need solutions necessarily have recommendations at the end of the report. So what are examples of recommendations you can place in your business reports or audit reports? Okay? You can suggest new or improved policies, procedures, or standards. Let's say, wala kayong nag-exist na policy o yung policy nyo obsolete na or defective or hindi siya mahusay o kaya may flaws yung policies. You propose an amended or an improved policy. Now, you could also possibly recommend sound decisions to make, especially when the problem requires a decision to be made. So, who will make decisions? Top management or maybe department heads? Another possible recommendation you could make would be guidelines to follow. For example, a particular event, a particular activity, or a particular project was so chaotic and there are policies, but you need specific guidelines that people should follow, then you should recommend that. Okay? Recommend guidelines to follow. Other possible recommendations could be initiating a project or a program. Let's say the problem is something that requires an action or something like a project. Okay? For example, mabagal ang processing ng payroll at saka delayed ang salaries ng mga tao. Maraming errors sa pag-compute ng salaries. So this is the problem that you saw. And that was also, the problem you saw was, there are issues on payroll. And your conclusion is, it's true. The current payroll system is inefficient and ineffective. So that's your conclusion. So perhaps your recommendation is to computerize it. Computerization project of the payroll system is a project. Okay? So that could be your recommendation. Another possible recommendation could be you could recommend a report to be produced, a document to be written, or a manual to be compiled, manual of policies, that is, or a form that people should accomplish or complete and submit. Okay? So that could be potential recommendations. Finally, you could also have as a possible recommendation legislation. Like, for example, a law that needs to be promulgated or a city ordinance that needs to be approved by the city council or needs to pass. So these are the examples of possible recommendations that will appear in your recommendation section. Okay? Now, let's look at video lecture number 38, the exercise that I want you to answer. So, put your answer in the comment section below this video in YouTube. Okay? So, here's the question. What could be the potential recommendation for each of the following conclusions? So I'm going to read out 5 statements. These are conclusion statements. And then for each one, letter A up to letter E, I want you to enumerate one recommendation each lang. Now, give me one recommendation for each of these conclusions. So I want to see 5 different answers. So you want to label them as A, B, C, D, or E. Let's start with A. Here's the conclusion statement. The internal controls of the company are deemed weak and wanting in improvement. What is the recommendation there? B. The conduct of such events in the past year was chaotic and did not follow any standard procedure. C. It was assessed that majority of the children under 8 years old in the community are considered malnourished. Letter D. The procurement contracts were generally awarded to favored suppliers and not to the best ones, causing the company to lose millions of pesos. And finally, letter E, during each cash count, there was not there was no standard form used either by the internal auditor and the cash custodian or cash custodian to document the audit procedure. Okay? So I repeat the last one. During each cash count, there was no standard form used either by the internal auditor or the cash custodian to document the audit procedure. Okay? So I want to see 5 answers. Okay? So stick around. I will proceed now. We shall proceed later on to video lecture number 39.